Japanese commanders mocked the P-38 Lightning, calling it the fork-tailed devil. Too heavy, too slow, never a real threat to the Empire's finest pilots. April 18, 1943. Bougainville airspace. Solomon Islands. 16. P-38 Lightning streak just 50 feet above Pacific waves, their twin engines roaring in perfect formation. Major John Mitchell grips his controls, sweat beading despite the morning chill. 400 miles ahead, Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, architect of Pearl Harbor, flies his routine inspection route, completely unaware that American codebreakers have read his mail. This isn't just another patrol. This is Operation Vengeance, the longest planned fighter interception in military history. One shot, one chance. Miss, and the Empire's greatest naval mind lives to fight another day. But if they succeed, they'll prove that American industrial might and tactical precision can reach anywhere on Earth. How did a clumsy American fighter outmaneuver Japan's most elite pilots? What happens when unstoppable abundance meets unbreakable resolve? Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. The roar of twin Allison engines split the dawn air over Henderson Field as Major John W. Mitchell ran his final pre-flight check. April 18, 1943, the P-38 Lightning sat heavy on the tarmac, loaded with 330-gallon drop tanks that would carry him farther over hostile territory than any fighter had ever flown. Every rivet, every bolt had been precision-crafted in Burbank, California, where women like Rosie Gonzalez worked 12-hour shifts to forge America's aerial sword. Mitchell's squadron of 16 P-38s represented the cutting edge of American aviation technology. 4 50-caliber machine guns and one 20-millimeter cannon mounted in the nose, no synchronization needed through spinning propellers. The twin-boom design that Japanese pilots mocked as ungainly actually provided unmatched stability and firepower concentration. At 400 miles per hour, climbing at 4,150 feet per minute, the Lightning could outrun and outclimb anything in the Japanese arsenal. The mission brief burned in Mitchell's memory. Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto would depart Rabaul at precisely 34 hours, flying his routine inspection route to Balal. American codebreakers had intercepted and decrypted the Japanese naval codes, revealing the architect of Pearl Harbor's exact schedule. 1,000 miles of ocean lay between Henderson Field and the intercept point, the absolute limit of the P-38's range. Captain Thomas Lanphier, Jr. synchronized his watch with Mitchell's, checking it twice. No margin for error existed. Arrived too early, and they'd run out of fuel circling. Too late, and Yamamoto would land safely under the protection of Japanese fighters. The timing had to be perfect, down to the minute. The smell of high-octane aviation fuel mixed with salt spray from the nearby lagoon. Each P-38 had been stripped of unnecessary weight, radios tuned to minimum power, ammunition reduced to essential loads. Everything sacrificed for range. The Pacific stretched endlessly ahead, a blue mirror reflecting clouds and possibility. Lieutenant Rex Barber adjusted his oxygen mask, tasting rubber and anticipation. Behind him, 14 other P-38s warmed their engines, propellers spinning silver discs in the morning light. These weren't just aircraft. They were the product of American industrial democracy, built by free workers in free factories, powered by the unleashed productive capacity of a nation awakened to war. The control tower's green flare arced across the dawn sky. Mitchell pushed his throttles forward, feeling 3,000 horsepower surge through the airframe. One by one, 16 fork-tailed devils lifted off Henderson Field, their landing gear retracting as they formed up over Iron Bottom Sound. Ahead lay 400 miles of open ocean, enemy territory, and the most important assassination mission in Pacific War history. 4,000 miles away, in a concrete bunker beneath Pearl Harbor, Commander Joseph Rochefort studied the decoded Japanese transmission for the dozenth time. The message, intercepted 3 days earlier, contained Admiral Yamamoto's complete inspection itinerary, departure times, routes, even aircraft types. JN-25, the Japanese naval code, had been systematically broken by American cryptographers working 18-hour shifts in windowless rooms. The intelligence bonanza carried enormous risk. Acting on the information might reveal to Japanese commanders that their most secret communications had been compromised. MAGIC, the code name for American code-breaking operations, represented one of the war's most closely guarded secrets. Exposing it could cost thousands of American lives as Japan changed its codes and operational security, but Yamamoto represented a target too valuable to ignore. The architect of Pearl Harbor, the strategic mind behind Japan's early Pacific victories, the one admiral who understood both American industrial potential and Japanese limitations. His loss would cripple Japanese naval planning for months, possibly years. Admiral Chester Nimitz himself had wrestled with the decision. In his sparse Pearl Harbor office, maps of the Pacific covered every wall, red pins marking Japanese positions, blue pins showing American forces. The strategic picture revealed a turning tide. American shipbuilding had begun to replace Pearl Harbor losses. New aircraft carriers slid down the ways weekly, and the industrial surge that Yamamoto had warned about was becoming reality. The decoded message specified Yamamoto's aircraft. A Mitsubishi G4M Betty bomber, fast but unarmored, escorted by 6 Mitsubishi A6M Zero fighters. Maximum speed 265 miles per hour, range 3,000 miles, but constructed with the same philosophy that governed all Japanese aircraft: speed and maneuverability over protection. No self-sealing fuel tanks, minimal armor plating, designed for an empire that expected quick victories and short wars. Lieutenant Commander Edwin Layton spread reconnaissance photographs across the briefing table. Rabaul Airfield, captured by Japanese aerial photography, showed rows of bombers and fighters. Intelligence estimates put Japanese air strength in the region at over 200 aircraft, all within range of the proposed intercept point. The P-38s would be flying into the heart of enemy territory. Outnumbered 10-1, Rochefort initialed the final mission authorization, his signature condemning Japan's greatest naval strategist to death. The paper would be burned within hours, the operation's details buried in classified files for decades. But somewhere over the Solomon Islands, American pilots would carry the fruits of American intelligence work into combat, transforming intercepted radio waves into bullets and bombs. At Lockheed's Burbank plant, Rosie Gonzalez positioned her rivet gun against the aluminum skin of P-38 fuselage number 4268192. Sparks cascaded in golden arcs as the pneumatic hammer drove. Hardened steel through aircraft-grade aluminum, each impact echoing through the cavernous factory like mechanical thunder. Around her, 15,000 workers, 40% of them women, assembled the fighters that would carry American air power to every corner of the Pacific. The transformation of American industry staggered Japanese intelligence analysts. In 1940, the United States had produced fewer than 3,000 military aircraft. By 1943, American factories delivered 85,000 warplanes, bombers, fighters, transports, trainers, while Japanese production peaked at barely 16,000. The numbers represented more than manufacturing capacity. They embodied the unleashed productive energy of democratic capitalism. Chief Engineer Clarence Kelly Johnson walked the production line, clipboard in hand, inspecting quality control points that would determine pilot survival thousands of miles away. Each P-38 incorporated innovations impossible in pre-war peacetime. Turbo-supercharged engines for high-altitude performance, tricycle landing gear for easier ground handling, concentrated nose armament for devastating firepower. The twin-boom configuration, mocked by enemy pilots, actually provided structural strength and fuel capacity unmatched by conventional designs. Maria Santos, recently arrived from New Mexico, welded electrical connections in the P-38's complex wiring harness. Her husband served with the 402nd Regimental Combat Team in Italy. Her brother flew B-24s over Germany. The aircraft taking shape under her hands would protect American boys fighting halfway around the world. Every solder joint, every wire splice carried the weight of personal investment in victory. The Lockheed plant operated around the clock, 3 shifts of workers maintaining continuous production. Raw aluminum arrived by rail from Alcoa plants in Tennessee and Washington, processed from bauxite ore mined in Arkansas, and refined using hydroelectric power from Pacific Northwest dams. The supply chain stretched across a continent, coordinated by managers who had learned mass production from Henry Ford and efficiency from Frederick Taylor. Japanese aircraft factories, struggling with material shortages, had begun substituting wood and fabric for aluminum components. Skilled craftsmen hand-fitted parts that American machines stamped out by the thousands. Emperor Hirohito's empire depended on artisanal production methods, while America deployed industrial mass production on an unprecedented scale. Rosie completed another rivet, part of the 250,000 fasteners holding each P-38 together. Her daily quota, 400 rivets, each one inspected and approved by quality control supervisors. Multiply by 15,000 workers, then by 3 shifts, and the mathematics of American abundance became clear. Democracy had mobilized its entire population for war production, turning housewives and farmers into precision manufacturers. The completed P-38 rolled out of final assembly, silver skin gleaming under fluorescent lights. Test pilots would flight check every system before delivery to combat units, from drawing board to combat ready, 90 days for a machine that represented the pinnacle of aeronautical engineering. In Japan, similar aircraft required 6 months of hand labor using increasingly scarce materials. Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto consulted his gold pocket watch as his staff car approached Rabaul Airfield. 09:20 hours, 14 minutes until scheduled departure. Punctuality had governed his entire naval career, from midshipman at Iwo Jima to architect of the Pearl Harbor attack. His reputation for precise timing was legendary throughout the Imperial Japanese Navy, arriving exactly on schedule for meetings, departing installations at predetermined moments, maintaining operational timetables despite weather or enemy action. The watch had been a gift from his father upon graduation from the Naval Academy, engraved with the family crest and a motto, "Time conquers all things." Today, that obsession with temporal precision would prove fatal. American codebreakers had read his schedule like a railroad timetable, calculating intercept points with mathematical certainty. At Rabaul, the largest Japanese airbase in the South Pacific, ground crews prepared Yamamoto's transport, a Mitsubishi G4M Betty bomber, painted in standard camouflage green and brown. The aircraft represented Japanese aviation philosophy, speed and range achieved through weight reduction and structural simplification. No armor plating protected the crew compartments. Fuel tanks lacked self-sealing capabilities. The entire airframe had been designed for an empire that expected quick victories and short conflicts. Chief Petty Officer Hiroshi Hayashi supervised the fuel loading. Each gallon measured precisely for the 315-mile flight to Balale. The Betty's maximum range of 3,000 miles seemed impressive, but came at the cost of survivability. American fighters like the P-38 carried self-sealing fuel tanks, armor plating around vital components, and redundant systems that allowed pilots to survive battle damage. Japanese aircraft sacrificed protection for performance, betting everything on avoiding combat rather than surviving it. Yamamoto's escort consisted of 6 Mitsubishi A6M-0 fighters, the most famous aircraft in the Japanese arsenal. Capable of 331 miles per hour and equipped with twin 20mm cannons, the Zero had dominated Pacific skies during the war's first 18 months. But American intelligence had analyzed captured examples, discovering critical weaknesses, minimal armor, unprotected fuel systems, and structural limits that American fighters could exploit. Commander Takeshi Mori briefed the escort pilots in the operations tent, emphasizing routine precautions. Enemy fighter activity had increased around Bougainville, but no American aircraft possessed the range to threaten flights between Rabaul and Balale. The P-38 Lightning, nicknamed Fork-tailed Devil by Japanese pilots, was considered too heavy and underpowered for effective interception at such distances. That assumption reflected a fundamental misunderstanding of American aircraft design philosophy. While Japanese engineers maximized performance through weight reduction, American designers achieved superior capability through increased power and advanced technology. The P-38's twin engines produced 3,000 horsepower total, nearly double the Zero's single-engine output. Turbo superchargers maintained power at high altitudes where Japanese fighters struggled. The result was an aircraft that appeared heavy and ungainly, but actually outperformed Japanese fighters in every measurable category except low-speed maneuverability. Yamamoto climbed aboard his Betty at exactly 0930, 4 minutes before scheduled departure. His aide, Lieutenant Noboru Fukuzoe, settled into the adjacent seat with briefing papers for the day's inspections. Neither man suspected that their adherence to published schedules had already sentenced them to death. 400 miles southeast, 16 American fighters raced toward an appointment that Yamamoto himself had arranged. 40,000 feet above the Lockheed Burbank plant, test pilot Tony Levere pushed P-38 prototype number 412322 through its performance envelope, twin Allison V1710 engines roaring at maximum power. Each engine produced 500 horsepower, liquid-cooled and turbo-supercharged for high-altitude operation. The technology represented 3 years of intensive development, transforming a promising design into the deadliest long-range fighter in the world. The Allison engines embodied American automotive engineering expertise adapted for aviation. General Motors had applied mass production techniques learned from automobile manufacturing, creating power plants that could be produced by the thousands while maintaining exceptional reliability. Each engine required 150 hours of precision machining, assembly, and testing before installation in combat aircraft. Japanese aviation engineers, studying captured P-38 components, marveled at the manufacturing precision. Cylinder tolerances measured in thousandths of inches, crankshafts balanced to eliminate vibration, turbo superchargers that maintained power output at altitudes where Japanese engines gasped for air. The technology gap between American and Japanese aircraft had widened dramatically since Pearl Harbor, driven by superior research facilities and unlimited production resources. Colonel Cass Hoff reviewed P-38 performance reports in his Pentagon office, tabulating combat statistics from across the Pacific. The Lightning's twin-engine configuration provided safety margins impossible with single-engine designs. Pilots could fly home on one engine, land with battle damage that would doom conventional fighters, and operate at extreme ranges without fear of mechanical failure. The redundancy reflected American abundance. 2 engines where others made do with 1. The turbo supercharger technology alone represented years of engineering advancement. Exhaust gases spun turbines that compressed intake air, maintaining sea-level power at altitudes exceeding 40,000 feet. Japanese aircraft, lacking similar technology, suffered dramatic power losses above 20,000 feet. American pilots could climb above enemy formations, choose their engagement altitudes, and dictate combat terms through technological superiority. Manufacturing statistics told the story of industrial mobilization. Allison's Indianapolis plant produced 200 engines monthly, each one tested for 50 hours before shipment. Quality control procedures eliminated defective units before installation, ensuring that combat pilots received power plants capable of sustained operation under extreme conditions. Japanese engine production, hampered by material shortages and quality control problems, delivered unreliable power plants that failed at critical moments. Technical Sergeant William Morrison supervised engine installation at March Field, California, where P-38s received final preparation before Pacific deployment. Each aircraft underwent 200 hours of testing, engine runs, flight checks, weapons calibration, radio verification. American pilots departed for combat with absolute confidence in their equipment, knowing that superior engineering backed their courage. The contrast with Japanese aircraft became apparent in every engagement. Zero fighters, admired for their maneuverability, carried engines that produced maximum power for limited periods before overheating. P-38 pilots could maintain combat power indefinitely, climbing faster, flying farther, and fighting longer than any opponent. The technical advantage translated directly into tactical superiority. Levier completed his test flight, landing smoothly at Burbank after 2 hours of high-altitude maneuvering. His report would join thousands of others, documenting the P-38's evolution from experimental prototype to proven combat weapon. The data flowed to Pacific Theater commanders, who planned increasingly ambitious missions based on the Lightning's demonstrated capabilities. 400 miles over open ocean no longer seemed impossible when American engineering made it routine. Captain William Wild Bill Henkel adjusted his radio compass, heading as the P-38 formation approached the first navigation checkpoint, 90 miles southeast of Henderson Field. Dead reckoning navigation over open ocean required absolute precision. 1 degree of error compounded over 400 miles could miss the target by dozens of miles. Each Lightning carried the most advanced navigation equipment available: radio compass, drift meter, and backup magnetic compass calibrated to compensate for Pacific magnetic variations. Major Mitchell's voice crackled through the radio headphones. Tiger formation, checkpoint Alpha on schedule, maintain course 290 degrees. 16 P-38s responded by tightening their formation, wingtips nearly touching as they skimmed 50 feet above Pacific swells. Radio discipline was critical. Japanese monitoring stations across the Solomons listened continuously for American transmissions that might reveal operational plans. The formation flying techniques had been perfected through months of training over the Guadalcanal practice range. Each pilot knew his position relative to Mitchell's lead aircraft, maintaining station through visual reference and engine synchronization. The P-38's twin-boom configuration actually improved formation stability, providing better visibility and reducing wake turbulence that could scatter single-engine fighters. Lieutenant William Smith cross-checked his navigation plot against the mission timeline, marking elapsed time and estimated fuel consumption. The P-38's range calculations depended on precise fuel management. Too much power meant running dry before reaching home. Too little meant arriving late for the intercept. American pilots had trained extensively in fuel conservation techniques, learning to squeeze maximum range from every gallon of high-octane aviation gasoline. Japanese fighter pilots, lacking similar training and equipment, rarely attempted flights exceeding 200 miles from base. The Zero's impressive range came at the cost of armor and self-sealing fuel tanks, making long-distance missions suicidal if intercepted. American planners had exploited this limitation, positioning airbases beyond Japanese fighter range while maintaining their own offensive capability through superior aircraft design, the P-38. Formation's communication equipment included high-frequency radios capable of maintaining contact with Henderson Field throughout the mission. Controllers could monitor the intercept progress, provide weather updates, and coordinate rescue operations if aircraft were forced down. Japanese forces, lacking similar communication networks, operated with minimal coordination between units. Navigation accuracy became critical as the formation approached enemy territory. Mitchell consulted his watch. 0:15 hours, 19 minutes to intercept. The timing had to be perfect. Yamamoto's Betty would appear at the designated coordinates at exactly 0934, following a flight path decoded from Japanese naval transmissions. American codebreakers had provided not just the schedule, but detailed route information, including altitude and escort arrangements. The radio compass needle swung toward the intercept bearing as Bougainville's volcanic peaks appeared on the horizon. Mitchell's formation had flown 350 miles of open ocean without deviation, arriving at the target area with fuel reserves sufficient for 30 minutes of combat, and the return flight to Henderson Field. The precision demonstrated American operational planning at its finest. Intelligence, navigation, timing, and logistics coordinated for maximum effect. Telling and preparing this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. Lieutenant Rex Barber spotted the first enemy aircraft at 9:34 precisely. Yamamoto's Betty bomber with its six-fighter escort, exactly where American intelligence had predicted. The intercept had succeeded through a combination of superior technology, extensive training, and operational excellence that Japanese forces could not match. 4 years of American industrial mobilization had produced this moment of tactical supremacy. At 0934 hours, Rex Barber squeezed his trigger, sending streams of 50 caliber bullets and 20 millimeter cannon shells toward the lead Betty bomber. The P-38's concentrated nose armament, 4 machine guns and 1 cannon firing straight ahead, created a cone of destruction that no aircraft could survive. Unlike wing-mounted guns that required convergent settings and ammunition synchronization, the Lightning's weapons fired parallel streams of death with devastating accuracy. The 50 caliber rounds, each weighing 1.7 ounces and traveling at 2,900 feet per second, punched through the Betty's aluminum skin like paper. Japanese aircraft designers had sacrificed armor for weight savings, creating fast but fragile machines that disintegrated under heavy fire. The bomber's unprotected fuel tanks erupted in orange flame as tracer rounds ignited aviation gasoline, turning Yamamoto's transport into a falling torch. Captain Thomas Lanphier climbed steeply toward the second Betty, his P-38's twin engines producing maximum power at sea level. The Lightning's superior climb rate, 4,150 feet per minute compared to the Zero's 3,100, allowed American pilots to dictate engagement terms. Japanese escort fighters, caught by surprise at low altitude, struggled to intercept the attacking Americans before their targets were destroyed. The contrast in aircraft philosophy became apparent within seconds of first contact. Zero fighters, optimized for dogfighting maneuverability, carried minimal ammunition and unarmored fuel systems. A few hits from P-38 guns could cripple or destroy them instantly. The Lightning, built for survivability, could absorb significant battle damage and continue fighting. Self-sealing fuel tanks, armored cockpits, and redundant systems gave American pilots confidence to press attacks home. Commander Takeshi Mori, leading Yamamoto's escort, attempted to organize his Zeros for counterattack. The Americans had achieved complete surprise, approaching from an unexpected direction at an impossible range. Intelligence reports indicated that no Allied fighters possessed the range to threaten flights between Rabaul and Balale. The appearance of P-38s proved those assessments catastrophically wrong. The engagement lasted less than 4 minutes. Barber's initial attack sent the first Betty into a terminal dive, black smoke trailing from shattered engines. Lanphier engaged the escort Zeros, his concentrated firepower overwhelming the lighter Japanese fighters. The Americans' superior training showed in their gunnery accuracy, short, precise bursts that conserved ammunition while maximizing damage. Yamamoto's Betty, piloted by Chief Warrant Officer Takeshi Kotani, attempted evasive maneuvers at treetop level. The bomber's maximum speed of 265 miles per hour was insufficient to escape P-38s capable of 400 miles per hour in level flight. American pilots had trained extensively in deflection shooting, learning to lead moving targets with mathematical precision. The Admiral's aircraft struck the jungle canopy at full speed, cartwheeling through trees before exploding against a hillside. The impact was so violent that search parties would require 2 days to locate the wreckage. Yamamoto's body, thrown clear of the fuselage, was found still strapped to his seat, killed instantly by the crash that ended Japan's most brilliant naval career. The surviving P-38s reformed and began the return flight to Henderson Field, fuel gauges showing reserves sufficient for the 400-mile journey home. Mission accomplished through a combination of superior intelligence, advanced aircraft design, and tactical execution that Japanese forces could not match. The fork-tailed Devil had proven its worth in the most important air combat of the Pacific War. 2 days after the engagement, Imperial Japanese Army search teams hacked through dense Bougainville jungle, following smoke columns from the crashed Betty bomber. Sergeant Harada Minoru's radio crackled with updates from other search parties spread across 10 square miles of mountainous terrain. The jungle had swallowed 2 aircraft and their crews without a trace. leaving Japanese commanders to fear the worst. The search effort involved 600 soldiers from the 6th Division garrison at Bougainville, supported by native guides familiar with the interior's treacherous terrain. Each team carried portable radios to coordinate the search pattern, but the jungle's thick canopy limited communication ranges. Progress was measured in hundreds of yards rather than miles, as machetes cleared paths through vegetation that had grown undisturbed for centuries. Lieutenant Colonel Yanagaya discovered the first wreckage site at 14:30 hours on April 20th. The bomber had struck trees at full speed, disintegrating across a quarter-mile debris field. Aluminum fragments hung from branches like metallic leaves, scattered among personal effects and classified documents. The impact had been so violent that identification of human remains required careful examination by medical personnel. Yamamoto's body was found 200 yards from the main wreckage, still strapped to his seat, thrown clear during the aircraft's final disintegration. The Admiral's distinctive white gloves and ceremonial sword confirmed his identity beyond question. His pocket watch had stopped at 0934, the exact moment American P-38s had intercepted his flight, transforming routine inspection into national catastrophe. The discovery sent shockwaves through Japanese command structure. Radio messages flashed from Bougainville to Rabaul, then to Tokyo, carrying news that would reshape naval strategy for the remainder of the war. Yamamoto's death eliminated the Imperial Navy's most experienced strategist, the officer who had warned against awakening America's industrial potential and who understood better than anyone the Empire's fundamental weaknesses. Japanese intelligence officers struggled to explain how American fighters had achieved such precise interception. The engagement occurred 400 miles from the nearest Allied airbase, well beyond the supposed range of any Allied fighter aircraft. The timing suggested advanced knowledge of Yamamoto's flight schedule, but Japanese communication security appeared intact. The possibility that Allied codebreakers had penetrated naval communications seemed impossible. Admiral Koga-Manechi, Yamamoto's designated successor, ordered immediate changes to high-level flight security. All senior officer movements would be classified at the highest levels, schedules would be randomized, and escort procedures would be strengthened. But the damage extended beyond operational security. Japanese naval planning had lost its central architect at the moment when American industrial mobilization was reaching full capacity. The psychological impact proved even more devastating than the strategic loss. Yamamoto had achieved legendary status among Japanese officers, respected for his tactical brilliance and strategic vision. His warnings about American industrial potential had proven prophetic, but his death demonstrated that even the Empire's most protected leaders were vulnerable to American reach. News of the Admiral's death was suppressed for weeks while authorities debated public disclosure. The Japanese people revered Yamamoto as the architect of Pearl Harbor, the officer who had struck the decisive blow against American naval power. Revealing his death would acknowledge that American forces had achieved tactical superiority, capable of striking anywhere in the Pacific with precision and devastating effect. The radio traffic coordinating the search operation was intercepted and decoded by American intelligence stations, providing confirmation of the mission's success. Japanese messages revealed confusion, shock, and desperate attempts to understand how American forces had achieved such precise timing. The intercepts proved that Operation Vengeance had succeeded beyond all expectations, eliminating Japan's premier naval strategist while maintaining the secrecy of American code-breaking capabilities. In the Willow Run plant outside Detroit, photographer Margaret Bourke-White captured the assembly line where B-24 Liberator bombers rolled off the production line at the rate of one aircraft every 63 minutes. The photograph, taken 3 weeks after Yamamoto's death, showed rows of 4-engine bombers stretching. Beyond the camera's range, silver aircraft that would soon carry the war to Japanese industrial targets across the Pacific. The image represented American industrial mobilization at its peak. Ford Motor Company had applied automobile assembly techniques to aircraft production, creating manufacturing efficiency that Japanese planners considered impossible. Each bomber required 1.2 million parts, assembled by workers who had been farmers, housewives, and shopkeepers 18 months earlier. Training programs lasting 6 weeks transformed civilians into precision manufacturers capable of building the world's most complex aircraft. Statistics from the war. Production Board revealed the scope of American manufacturing supremacy. In 1943, United States factories produced 85,198 aircraft, compared to Japan's 16,693, a ratio of more than 5 to 1. American shipyards launched 19.2 million tons of shipping, while Japanese yards completed 769,000 tons. The numbers represented more than manufacturing capacity. They demonstrated the complete mobilization of democratic society for total war. Japanese intelligence analysts studying captured American equipment marveled at the manufacturing quality. Machine tolerances exceeded Japanese standards, materials showed superior metallurgy, and production techniques indicated unlimited access to strategic resources. Aluminum, steel, copper, and rubber flowed into American factories in quantities that Japanese planners could barely comprehend. The photographic evidence contradicted Japanese propaganda claims about American industrial weakness. Instead of the soft democracy described in imperial newspapers, the images revealed a nation that had transformed its entire economy for war production. Every major city contributed specialized components: engines from Indianapolis, propellers from Connecticut, electronics from Massachusetts, final assembly from plants scattered across the continent. Roseville Monroe, the original Rosie the Riveter, worked third shift at the Willow Run plant, installing electrical systems in B-24 cockpits. Her husband served with the 8th Air Force in England. Her brother fought with Marines in the Pacific. The aircraft taking shape under her hands would support American forces worldwide, delivering bombs to Japanese targets while protecting convoys carrying supplies to Allied armies. The contrast with Japanese war production became more stark each month. Shortages of aluminum forced Japanese manufacturers to substitute wood and fabric in aircraft construction. Skilled workers were conscripted for military service, leaving factories dependent on untrained civilians and Korean forced laborers. Quality control suffered as managers prioritized quantity over reliability, producing aircraft that failed at critical moments. American factory workers earned wages that exceeded pre-war income, enabling them to purchase war bonds that financed additional production. The economic cycle created sustainable war manufacturing. High wages supported worker morale, while bond purchases funded military expansion. Japanese workers, subjected to rationing and wage controls, produced less while consuming minimal resources. Bork White's photograph appeared in Life magazine, demonstrating American productive capacity to readers worldwide. The image carried a clear message. Democratic industry had achieved manufacturing supremacy that authoritarian regimes could not match. Japanese leaders, reading translated copies, understood that their empire faced an opponent whose material advantages were increasing daily. The industrial tsunami that Yamamoto had predicted was drowning Japan's war effort in American abundance. In Admiral Chester Nimitz's Pearl Harbor headquarters, staff officers updated the massive Pacific theater map with red pins marking Japanese positions and blue pins showing American advances. Following Yamamoto's death, Japanese naval operations had become noticeably more conservative, abandoning the aggressive tactics that had characterized the war's first 18 months. Operation Vengeance had validated American long-range strike doctrine, proving that distance no longer protected enemy commanders. The map revealed the strategic transformation occurring across the Pacific. American forces were advancing on multiple fronts, supported by logistics networks that Japanese planners had considered impossible. The Guadalcanal campaign, which had cost Japan irreplaceable naval aviation units, was now expanding into the central Solomon Islands. Each American victory was backed by industrial production that replaced losses within weeks, while Japanese defeats represented irreplaceable strategic assets. Captain Edwin Layton, Nimitz's intelligence chief, briefed the strategic situation with satisfaction. Magic intercepts revealed Japanese confusion about American capabilities, particularly regarding fighter aircraft range and operational planning. The successful interception of Yamamoto had demonstrated that American intelligence could penetrate Japanese communications, predict enemy movements, and coordinate precision strikes across vast distances. The P-38 Lightning program had proven the value of long-range fighter development. Military planners were already designing missions that would have been impossible without aircraft capable of 1,000-mile combat radius. The doctrine of extended range interception, validated by Operation Vengeance, would become standard practice for American air forces throughout the Pacific campaign. Japanese naval strategy had shifted dramatically following their admiral's death. Intelligence reports indicated that senior officers now avoided scheduled flights, traveled with larger escorts, and varied their routes unpredictably. The measures demonstrated Japanese recognition that American forces possessed unprecedented reach and precision, capable of striking targets anywhere in the Pacific theater. The strategic implications extended beyond individual operations. American industrial capacity was producing aircraft, ships, and weapons at rates that Japanese forces could not match or replace. Every engagement favored American forces through superior numbers, advanced technology, and logistical support. The material balance of power was shifting inexorably toward the United States. Brigadier General Lawrence Cooter reviewed Air Force expansion plans that called for 15,000 additional aircraft over the next 12 months. American training programs were producing 100,000 new pilots annually, while Japanese flight schools struggled with fuel shortages and aircraft availability. The numerical advantage would compound monthly as American production accelerated and Japanese capabilities declined. The map's blue pins showed American positions advancing westward across the Pacific, each movement supported by massive logistics operations. Task forces of 200-plus ships carried entire armies across thousands of miles of ocean, establishing bases that brought American air power within range of Japanese industrial centers. The Empire's defensive perimeter was contracting, under pressure from forces that grew stronger with each engagement. Nimitz studied the strategic projection charts that extended American offensive capability to Japan's home islands. The industrial base that had produced Operation Vengeance was now manufacturing the tools for total victory. Yamamoto's death had eliminated Japan's most competent naval strategist at the moment when American superiority was becoming overwhelming. The Pacific War's outcome was no longer in doubt. Only the timeline remained uncertain. President Franklin D. Roosevelt reviewed the citation for the Navy Cross awarded to Captain Thomas Lanphier, Jr., one of the P-38 pilots who had intercepted Admiral Yamamoto. The ceremony, held in the White House Rose Garden, celebrated not just individual heroism, but the systematic superiority that had made Operation Vengeance possible. American pilots, flying American aircraft, guided by American intelligence, had eliminated Japan's premier naval strategist through precision planning and flawless execution. The medal represented more than individual recognition. It symbolized the transformation of American military capability since Pearl Harbor. 28 months earlier, Japanese forces had achieved complete tactical surprise against unprepared American defenses. Now American intelligence could predict enemy movements. American industry could produce weapons superior to anything Japan fielded, and American forces could strike targets anywhere in the Pacific with devastating accuracy. Secretary of the Navy Frank Knox presented additional decorations to the cryptographers, intelligence analysts, and logistics officers whose work had enabled the mission's success. The modern military victory required coordination between multiple specialties: codebreakers, who intercepted enemy communications, engineers who designed superior aircraft, factory workers who manufactured weapons, and pilots who delivered decisive strikes. Democratic society had mobilized all its resources for total war. The ceremony occurred as industrial statistics demonstrated American productive supremacy. In 1943, the United States had manufactured 85,000 aircraft, while Japan produced 16,000. American shipyards launched vessels, totaling 19 million tons, while Japanese output reached 769,000 tons. The numerical advantage was overwhelming and increasing monthly as American production accelerated while Japanese capabilities declined under resource shortages. Roosevelt's speech emphasized the democratic principles underlying American military success. Free workers in free factories had outproduced authoritarian regimes through superior organization, advanced technology, and unlimited access to strategic materials. The war was demonstrating that democratic capitalism could mobilize resources more effectively than totalitarian systems, creating sustainable advantages that compound over time. Major John Mitchell, the mission leader, received the Distinguished Flying Cross for planning and executing the longest fighter interception in military history. His achievement validated American tactical doctrine, emphasizing long-range precision strikes supported by advanced intelligence and superior logistics. The techniques pioneered in Operation Vengeance would become standard practice for American forces throughout the Pacific Campaign. The medal ceremony was photographed for Life magazine, demonstrating American military excellence to readers worldwide. The images carried strategic messaging. American forces possessed the capability to eliminate enemy leaders anywhere in the Pacific, supported by intelligence networks that penetrated Japanese security and manufacturing capacity that produced superior weapons in unlimited quantities intelligence. Reports indicated that Yamamoto's death had disrupted Japanese naval planning significantly. Admiral Koga, his successor, lacked Yamamoto's strategic vision and aggressive tactical instincts. Japanese operations had become more defensive and predictable, allowing American forces to seize initiative across multiple theaters. The psychological impact of losing their premier naval strategist was compounding the material disadvantages facing Japanese forces. The White House ceremony concluded with Roosevelt's prediction that American industrial and military superiority would ensure complete victory over fascist regimes. The president's confidence was supported by production statistics showing American capability increasing exponentially, while enemy resources declined under strategic bombing and naval blockade. The giant that Yamamoto had warned against awakening was now fully mobilized for total war. At the National Museum of World War II in New Orleans, visitors studied the P-38 Lightning display case containing artifacts from Operation Vengeance, flight instruments, ammunition samples, photographs of the pilots, and decoded Japanese messages that revealed Yamamoto's fatal schedule. The exhibit demonstrated how American technological superiority, intelligence capabilities, and industrial capacity had combined to eliminate Japan's premier naval strategist through precision planning and flawless execution. Curator James Patterson explained the mission's significance to a group of veterans, emphasizing how the operation validated American military doctrine, emphasizing long-range precision strikes. The P-38's unprecedented 1,000-mile combat radius had enabled attacks that Japanese planners considered impossible, demonstrating that democratic industry could produce weapons superior to anything authoritarian regimes fielded. The museum's statistical displays revealed the scope of American industrial mobilization. In 1943, United States factories produced 85,000 aircraft, 45,000 tanks, and 19 million tons of shipping, output that exceeded total Axis production across all categories. The numbers represented more than manufacturing capacity. They demonstrated the complete transformation of democratic society for total war production. Retired Colonel William Morrison, who had served as a P-38 maintenance officer during the war, described the aircraft's technological advantages to students from local schools. Twin engines provided redundancy and extended range, concentrated nose armament delivered devastating firepower, and turbo-supercharged systems maintained power at altitudes where enemy fighters struggled. American engineering had created weapons that outperformed Axis equivalents in every measurable category. The exhibit included personal artifacts from Rosie Gonzalez, the Lockheed factory worker whose rivets had helped build the P-38s used in Operation Vengeance. Her rivet gun, safety goggles, and wartime identification badge represented the millions of American workers who had transformed the nation's industrial capacity for military production. Democratic mobilization had proved more effective than authoritarian. Systems at coordinating resources for sustained conflict. Visitors examined decoded Japanese messages that revealed enemy confusion about American capabilities. Intelligence intercepts showed Japanese officers struggling to understand how Allied fighters had achieved such precise interception at impossible ranges. The communications demonstrated that American code-breaking had penetrated Japanese security completely, turning enemy messages into tactical weapons. The display case contained a fragment of Yamamoto's aircraft, recovered from the Bougainville crash site and preserved as evidence of American tactical excellence. The aluminum piece showed battle damage from .50 caliber machine gun rounds, demonstrating the effectiveness of concentrated firepower against unarmored Japanese aircraft. The physical evidence supported statistical data showing overwhelming American advantages in weapons technology, and manufacturing quality school groups learned about the strategic consequences of Yamamoto's death, including the disruption of Japanese naval planning and the psychological impact of losing their most respected commander. Intelligence reports had revealed that Japanese operations became more conservative and predictable following the Admiral's elimination, allowing American forces to seize initiative across the Pacific theater. The museum's educational programs emphasized lessons relevant to contemporary military challenges. American success in World War II had resulted from superior industrial capacity, advanced technology, effective intelligence operations, and democratic mobilization of national resources. These advantages had proved decisive against authoritarian regimes that initially appeared more prepared for modern warfare. The exhibit concluded with Roosevelt's prediction that democratic nations, properly equipped and organized, could overcome any tyrannical regime through sustained application of superior resources and technology. The president's confidence had been validated by victory achieved through the marriage of individual courage and collective abundance, demonstrating that freedom's arsenal could outproduce and outfight authoritarian alternatives when fully mobilized for righteous conflict. If you enjoyed the story, I handpicked this next story that you will enjoy. Please don't miss this one. Click here to watch it.